Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, a little Middlekauff mailbag time. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your question answered here on the show. At John Middlekauff, my name, Instagram, DMs. I think the big thing with Maye is that he's never had a one-on-one quarterback coach since he's always been doing other sports and didn't commit to being a quarterback until 2 years ago. Anyone who's seen his basketball highlights, he was a Division I basketball recruit, and his brothers play basketball. A lot of these college quarterbacks have had a quarterback coach work with them on footwork since they were 13. Now, it's certainly possible that when he cleans up his footwork, that inconsistent accuracy could go away, much like it did for Herbert and Allen. But banking on that is still a big gamble. There are a lot more guys who can't get that fixed than there are guys like Herbert and Allen. The question now, are his bad mechanics baked in, or can he fix them with an actual NFL coach? Well, I think this is the $1 million question. I mean, this is the unanswerable question about drafts. When you get a guy in college that has some raw tools, but needs to get fixed up fundamentally, you could argue in any sport. Baseball, something's wrong with his swing or pitching mechanics. Basketball, hitching his shot. Can that be fixed? Or is there a muscle memory component that can't be coached out? But the reason these guys with elite physical attributes, teams are going to draft high, Anthony Richardson a couple years ago at 4, Drake Maye at 3, and look who wanted him, Kevin O'Connell and Dayball as well, is because they believe they can fix them. And if they fix them, you're set. Herbert, to me, was different than Josh. If you watch Justin Herbert in college, one, relative to Oregon, their skill wasn't as great. Coaching wasn't as great. It was pretty clear like he was a big-time NFL talent. Josh's inaccuracies, now who he was playing with. Even though I saw someone post, I think it was on Instagram, just like an 8-play Wyoming highlight of Josh Allen. You're like, yeah. So, but football is less about the splash plays and more about the layups, right? Most of your plays in football are hitting a quick out route, hitting a slant route on time, hitting your check down wheel route in stride so he can get upfield, and the difference of hitting him in stride and him gaining 7 yards on 3rd and 7, or making him stumble behind and he gets tackled and you don't get the first down because he only gains 3 yards. So the touch on basic stuff or where the fundamentals come in. This gets back to the best players, the 2 best quarterbacks I've ever seen, right, in their primes, Brady and Manning, were fundamental savants. And now, granted, they weren't runners, so they had to be perfect fundamentally. Drew Brees. So fundamentally, they worked on that 24/7, 365. Aaron Rodgers got a little out of the loop the last year of McCarthy and that first year of LaFleur. And then they kind of got him back to the basics and he won back-to-back MVPs. With obviously added his little Aaron Rodgers flair because he could move better than those guys. But I would say fundamentals, no matter what you play, whether it's tennis on a volley, whether it's golf on a chip, whether it's, being a great second baseman on turning 2, always matter and always will. It's why the first period of football practice after stretching is individual, meaning the O-lineman with the O-lineman. Well, what are they going over? Stance, steps, D-lineman, get-offs, linebacker and DBs, drop reads, steps, basic placement of hands for linemen. Quarterback, what are they going over? Footwork. Every single practice of every single football, every day in football at practice, it's the first thing you do before you go into group and unit stuff is individual fundamental work. NFL to Pee Wee football. Pee Wee football, you might spend even more time on fundamental. But college, if you went to Nick Saban practice or you went to a Belichick practice, the first period of practice, once you break from stretching, is all going to look somewhat the same. So it's very, very important. And how serious you take that stuff. Like when you hear these people talk about how serious Tom Brady and Peyton Manning took practice, they're not just talking about team when it's 11 on 11. They're talking about the individual portion, hammering home 3-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, my footwork in shotgun. So it's just like you don't even think, right? We talk about it in the golf world all the time. The more you're thinking about your swing, the more often you're not going to play well. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, when they ran a play, never thought about their footwork. It was ingrained, the correct footwork. Obviously, sometimes you have to ad-lib, but like what was Peyton Manning the best at when it came to fundamentals? The stretch handoff, he sold it where you didn't know it was going to be a handoff or not a handoff. They did that on last year on Hard Knocks. Hackett ran that the videos in the meeting room. Is this a handoff or is this a throw? And with Aaron Rodgers, you couldn't tell. To me, that's probably what you're talking about. But all that, the fundamentals of playing the sport, before you can be a great player, you got to be good on that. Patrick Mahomes gets so much credit for being this like Favrean player. Do you know how much him and Andy go over the fundamentals on a daily basis, 6 months a year in practice? Every day. They hammer that stuff home, and rightfully so. Before I read a couple more Instagrams, I've got a couple emails that I wanted to read just because these guys don't have Instagram. College football question here. As the gap has never been wider in college football between the Power 5 and non-Power 5, what are these smaller conferences even playing for anymore? Between NIL deals and the portal, how can these schools even compete? The odds of them making the playoffs are almost zero. I got news for you. As this playoffs moves forward, I don't think we will see non-Power 5 teams get in. I think they will be asked out every single time. Wouldn't it make sense for them to get rid of the ridiculous bowl system and have them create their own postseason tournament, kind of like the NIT? The games would mean more, and they could crown a quote-unquote champion in the end. It would give more meaning to their season instead of playing in the Potato Bowl. Would love to hear your thoughts. Well, I don't think we're far away from just seeing the big Power 5 be a group of 50 teams and them just compete to get to you either make the playoffs or you're done. I think we are, because the bowls are still going to exist even with the 12-team playoffs, like the random Potato Bowls. But I think within the next 5 years, things are moving at rapid speed now in college sports. We will see the big boys, the top 50 schools. However, I think it'll inevitably be like the AFC, NFC, the equivalent in Power 5, like the Big Ten, SEC, right? Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten, Florida State, Clemson, and these teams just kind of go to either conference, the ones that survive. And then the non-Power 5s, I love that idea. Because once they do this, once they've gone to 12 teams, and this is the hard part because they don't have a commissioner, they don't have like a czar of football, you should not be allowed, like USC should not be allowed to play Fresno State or San Diego State. You're non-conference, and same thing, Alabama. You should only be able to play other Power 5 teams. Now, you can play a quote-unquote crappier Power 5 team if instead of playing Alabama, you want to play Mississippi State if you're USC, or Kansas State or whoever. You don't have to play Oklahoma, but you should only be able to play each other. Can you imagine in the NFL? It's like it's week 2, and the Niners are playing the Memphis Stampede of the UFL. You're like, what? What is going on? I think it's somewhat similar. Now, if you're Fresno State, you want to play USC and Oregon because you get paid. But that shouldn't be allowed anymore. And I think if I was a betting man, that will inevitably happen. And when it does, those teams 100% should all, the non-Power 5 teams should all play each other. And I love this idea. I hadn't thought of like a tournament, but D1, listen, I went to Cal Poly, D1 AA. They have playoffs. 16 teams make it, and there's a bracket, and you crown a champion. It's usually North Dakota State, Montana, or South Dakota State. That's what I would do. So I think you're 100% on to something there. And I wouldn't be shocked if that inevitably happens in some form or fashion, close to what you were saying. Huge fan of the pod. My two biggest passions are sports and marketing. Would love to chat over a call, some ideas, a couple of examples of content to rap about if you ever find yourself struggling to fill the air. This guy's filling my show. The NFL dominates because it's the most relatable sport to humans and is solely driven by production and conducted like many companies we all work for, so it's relatable. With this in mind, football fans want to be as close to the product as possible, which is the best problem to have in business. The draft dominates. Why not add an 8th round, but with a nod to fantasy football? It's randomized snake draft, and the order isn't known until 10 minutes before the round starts. Would add some intrigue to the late round, mostly undrafted free agent picks. Kind of like that idea. Ability to pick a quarterback as a camera view from Sunday Ticket, so you can stream your favorite quarterback and watch the game through his helmet cam with the sound maybe VR. The ability to trade franchise tags yearly, i.e., the 49ers trade their 2025 franchise tag to the Colts for a second-round pick. Colts then could franchise Pat McAfee and Peyton Manning in 25 as an example. Would give like how I threw McAfee and Manning. Would give teams control. Don't hate that idea. Don't hate that idea at all. If you're not using your franchise tag, you can trade it to another team that can then franchise tag multiple people. I would say, would anyone give up a 1 for the right? I think teams would give a second-round pick if they wanted to franchise tag 2 guys. That was a good little thought nugget there. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Can you please explain to me, as a Niners fan, how we're supposed to feel excited about this? When do we fix the offensive line? When do you get the money to pay these where do you get the money to pay these not on the roster replacements when you pay Ayuk and Purdy? Let Trent leave? Sign 3 different ones? Please help me understand this wacky draft strategy. What's the path forward for offensive line on this already less than stellar group? Well, they did draft an interior offensive lineman from Kansas that can play guard or center. They've invested in Aaron Banks. He's got to be a starter. They invested a 4th rounder in Burford. He's not very good. But historically, you've been able to find functional guards and centers late in the draft and during the waiver claim period. Tackle's a different beast. I can't fault them for not drafting a tackle at pick 31 if they didn't think there was a guy good enough to draft in that spot. And I'm pretty sure an offensive tackle didn't go in the next several spots. It was like wide receivers and defensive linemen and corners. So just because you need a Trent replacement, they do, because he's 35, 36 years old. He's not going to play forever. One, there's no replacing him. They will never have a better tackle than Trent Williams. Unless one year they absolutely suck and get the number 1 pick and there's Jonathan Ogden in the draft, 2.0. So there's going to be a downgrade when Trent leaves. But you can't force fill that spot. That's bad business, because if you force a need, and here's the other thing. They lost to the Super Bowl because they couldn't block Chris Jones. True. Their offensive line on an individual basis is not great. They had the lead in the Super Bowl. So their ability as a coaching staff and as an offense to coach around one high-end offensive lineman and a bunch of randos has proven to be pretty good. Hell, they got Mike McGlinchey $50 million guaranteed. Like, I would say I would trust their ability to coach these guys up at that position. If their offensive line was the reason they were winning 8 or 9 games, I'd be like, we got a problem, boys. They just had the number 1 seed in the NFC and went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. Now, their downfall was they couldn't block Chris Jones. I got news for you. Most people can't. So I hear you, but I think it's easy to just say that than in reality, like, I don't know if should they have traded up in the second round to get a guy? Well, what's the hit rate on that? You think you're just going to find like Lane Johnson? You know, I mean, sometimes you got to get a little lucky. Maybe in one of your mid-round picks becomes a 5-year starter. They found Laken Tomlinson years ago, and he became a really good player for them, and then ended up getting a bunch of money from the Jets. So you got to make those moves. Now, at tackle, that's not going to happen. And they have a weakness at tackle. Their right tackle is not very good relative to the league. Luckily, Trent is. And you just run to his side. Problem is he gets hurt, then you're in a pinch. Big fan of the show. People love to debate whether top college football teams could beat some of the worst NFL teams, which I don't think would ever be possible. But what if one of the great college football teams played a UFL team? I haven't watched any UFL, but I'm curious about the level of talent that's in that league. Well, I haven't watched a snap either, but my guess would be, let's use an example. Georgia a couple years ago, the team with 8 million pros. I think they had a ton that were like top 50 picks. Would beat any team in the UFL. Michigan, they just had 13 guys drafted and probably another 4 or 5 signed undrafted free agents. Would beat every team in the UFL. Because JJ McCarthy is a better quarterback than all those guys. And they have 6'7" NFL linemen. The UFL does not have 6'7" NFL linemen. Like most of the guys in the UFL are not NFL players. So I think it is fair to say that the top teams in college football would beat UFL teams. Now, if you just gave like, could San Diego State or could, Arizona State? Yeah, I have no clue. I would guess not, but who knows? But like Bama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, would they beat them? I would. My first reaction is yes. Again, 0 saps of the UFL. Minor league football is not for me. Big fan of the pod and hearing from your perspective. If the Dolphins don't pay Tua, does taking a quarterback like Penix, who is similar to what they already have, both are left-handed, so this was before, or do they go with someone like Joe Milton? Here's the thing. I think you can not pay Tua, and not drafting a quarterback high is also a smart move. I do not expect them. Let me rephrase that. I don't think they need to. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to, but I do think the proper business decision would just be to play it out. And Tua knows. Tua's showing up to the offseason because he knows, like, what have I really earned? I'm a good NFL player. I'm going to have a job as an NFL starter for a while. If they don't want me, someone else will pay me. But I do think it's fair for the Dolphins to go, is he worth investing this much in? When you see these companies like in Fortune 500 stock market world merge or pay for someone, they go, this company is worth $2 billion to us because we think that in the next 5 years, it'll 10x us or 5x us or generate X number worth of ROI over a period of time. I think you have to look like that with a quarterback. Can we do better? Is this the best we can do? If we get rid of this guy, could we upgrade? If we do pay him and it limits our budget, is it worth it? Is he good enough to beat the guys we have to beat? I think there are a lot of variables that you could ask yourself. That's why I get back to Dak. To me, they've paid Dak. and they haven't been able to get over the hump. And a large reason is because Dak is underwhelmed in the playoffs. When you need him to play his best, that's what you're paying him for. He's a really good, excellent regular season quarterback. Going to Pro Bowls, putting up good numbers. He's a winning player. But there's a difference between a winning regular season player and a winning playoff player. Like, I even think Lamar took a little step this year. You feel better about him in the playoffs. But, like, now it's time to go. If you ever want to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to go to that legendary spot where it's like you have a flawless game against a couple elite opponents. We know you can do it in the regular season. I watched you do it this year, running circles around all these teams. You guys were blowing everybody out. What happens when we get into a playoff game against Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow? And it's a tie game in the second half. Can you still play at that elite level? We've already paid you. You're already worth it to us. But now our next goal is to win the Super Bowl. Like, the Dolphins' goal now is to win a playoff game. And I think it's fair to ask, is Tua good enough to win a playoff game? And you could argue in the AFC, I don't know. Think about, like, the potential first-round matchups. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, C.J. Stroud, Harbaugh and Herbert. You're not going to have the best quarterback in any of these games. How do you see JJ's rookie year going? Start week 1, start by Thanksgiving, sit out the year. Would love to hear your take. Observation. In Russell Wilson's final year with Seattle, he was seen sitting next to Goodell many times on TV during the Super Bowl. I feel like he was positioning himself to be the next commissioner. Obviously, his chances of that may be gone, but I believe that his angle, given his positive and PC persona, do you think there's any truth to that take? For Russell Wilson to even have a slimmer of hope to be the next commissioner, and again, I've never even seen that or heard that or thought that, he would have to go work for the league office for a long time and get in with the NFL owners. The only commissioners in sports, Manfred worked for baseball when C-League got out. Adam Silver was David Stern's right-hand guy. Roger Goodell worked for the league for 30 years or 20 years or whatever, since the early 80s. These leagues do not hire people that aren't league employees and that don't know the dirt of the NFL. They're not hiring outside CEOs. This isn't corporate America here. They only hire from within. And I don't blame them. So I would say he has no chance unless he's willing to go work for the league office for 15 plus years. And then, yeah, who knows? The JJ thing's tough. I don't think he could beat out Sam Darnold in training camp. So if Sam Darnold beats him out, I think then it's all predicated on wins and losses. Usually these guys come in when the team's not doing well. Think about Lamar. Came in because the Ravens weren't playing well. Flacco looked shot. Mahomes never did. Why? Because they were like 11, 12 win team with Alex Smith. So to me, it's all based on Sam Darnold, who to me is a wild card. If you tell me Sam sucks and they're 1-4, I'd believe you. If you tell me Sam's solid and their team's good and they're 5-5 and they just keep rolling with him, I'd believe you too. So I think he's the hardest. Like, Drake Maye is going to play this year. Why? The Patriots aren't going to be that good and Jacoby's not good enough. And so you just factor in they're much more likely to be 2-6. Minnesota could be, but I also could see a situation where they're just competitive. The talent around them on offense, offensive play callers, their head coach. He's proven to be a good head coach. Hell, he was competitive with random quarterbacks last year. So I'd be guessing. My guess is he plays. I would say later than sooner, though, because I think they'll be competitive early. And if somehow Darnold's just god awful, he looks like the Jets-Panthers guy, then you'll see him before Thanksgiving. Because that's just the way the NFL works. Because the fans have a lot of juice. Because the fans will be like, they'll start booing, calling into sports talk radio, and you'll be like, oh, why does that matter? Because that's where the owner listens. And the owner's not going to go, we just drafted this guy in the first round to just watch Sam Darnold. So if you start slow, the rookie plays. Rinse, wash, repeat. That's just how it happens. If you're in the mix and you have even a bridge quarterback, that guy will play. Question for the bag. Would you consider doing a statement on today in NFL history? It could revolve around big plays or games, controversies, contracts, or just simple facts about coaches, players being fired or released. It would be cool for folks not as well versed in sports history to get a window into the past. Thanks for the content. As a military officer, I look forward to listening on the commute every day. We appreciate your service. That's probably not really my jam, to be honest with you. Not really something that excites me. Obviously, during the off season, like May 8th, this day in NFL history, people took the day off. During the season, I guess it would have more relevancy, but there's just so much stuff going on. Long way of saying it's probably not going to happen. This isn't History Pod. But again, appreciate your service. Why don't you think Belichick's assistants have been successful coaches? With a highly successful team like the Pats, you would imagine that there would be many successful future head coaches on the staff. Then you have a team like the 12 Redskins who played one game in the playoffs and lost. But under Mike Shanahan, the Redskins had 5 NFL head coaches: Kyle, McVay, LaFleur, McDaniels, and Raheem Morris. With that much star power on the coaching staff, you would imagine that teams would be playing for Super Bowls. Well, their team wasn't as good, right? If you gave that staff Brady, Gronk, Edelman, McCourty, Hightower, and all those guys, they would have been a lot better. So you do, this is professional sports. You do need talent on the squad. I would also say that's somewhat of a unique situation. Sean McVay's what? 37, 38 years old? Well, in 2012, he was 27. Kyle was in his early 30s. Mike McDaniel was probably 30 years old, max. So the guys you see now are much different coaches than you saw then. And I would imagine Kyle would say, I became a much better coach when I left my dad, when I went to Cleveland for a year, then I went and worked with Matt Ryan. It's like any young person in any industry. You kind of grow with time. You hone on to your skills. Think about Sean McVay. He was like a position coach then, coaching tight ends. Well, 4 or 5 years later, Jay Gruden comes on. He got to call the offense. So he got to learn by doing. That's what we say at Cal Poly. And that helps you become better at your craft. So would Sean McVay have been as good of a coach with the Rams in 2017 and 18 if Jay Gruden never let him call plays? Probably not. So I think it's easy to say this group of guys were all there together. Ultimately, Mike was the boss. And who your head coach is matters a lot. And their quarterback ended up getting hurt. Right? If RG3 hadn't got hurt his rookie season, and they just would have had that level of athlete and player for a couple of years, I think they would have been more competitive. Do I think they'd win a Super Bowl? Probably not. But could they have made the playoffs several years in a row? 100%. But I also think, if you just look at any successful person that's under 45 in 2024, if you looked at them in 2012, they wouldn't be that same person. They might have been a guy that most people thought, this guy's never going to make it. This guy's got no shot. I don't care what business you're in. So I think you got to factor in time, different experiences. I mean, a lot of them bounced around, went to different places, learned from different people, and just improved on their craft. So it's not like a player where it's like, yeah, he's kind of ready to win right now. It's not like, usually coaches get better with time. Look at Andy Reid. Won 3 of 5 Super Bowls over 60 years old. Started coaching when he was as a head coach in 1999. Now, they had a lot of success in Philly, but I think he'd be the first to tell you, I'm a way better coach now than I was in 2004. So I think it's easy to play that game, and that graphic is so famous because mainly the 3-headed monster of, LaFleur's had a bunch of success with Rodgers and now Jordan Love. Sean McVay crushed it, won a Super Bowl, and Kyle's been winning pretty consistently now for 5 years. I just think if you looked at me in 2012 or I looked at you in 2012, whatever you're doing now, it's like, what? How'd you end up there? I think that happens a lot. There's a lot of 25-year-olds right now struggling, 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds. Where in 12 years, you're going to be in a dramatically better spot. You'll be better at what you do. You'll have gone through experiences. I was just talking to my girlfriend about this because she's going through some business stuff. And, I would say learning hard lessons is one way to say it, but I just say learning good lessons. The faster you learn, whatever industry you're in, like, yeah, it's kind of cutthroat. Whoever you're dealing with, first and foremost, is going to care about themselves and their family more than yours. And quote unquote, trying to screw you, get over on you, fuck you, however you look at it. I don't mean sexually, I mean like financially. You just, those are good lessons to learn. And they make you better with time to realize, like, to become numb to certain stuff, to know what to look for. They harden you, whether you're a coach, whether you're a salesman, whether you're doing whatever. So the more experiences, like pro sports, you have a short window to maximize. For most of us in all the industries we work in, we should be this, and coaching falls into this too. You should be dramatically better at 40 than you were at 27, or 50 than you were at 35, because you just know more. You've seen more, you've had more experiences, good and bad. And bad experiences make you better. So I bet Kyle learned more about himself the next couple of years when they were crappy than he did the 1 year with RG3. He never run that offense again. He did it for a split second with Trey Lance, and he hated it. He's like, I hate this crap. This is not what I do. You know? So I just think time. None of those guys, if we would have made all 5 of those guys, and we'll see about Raheem in Atlanta, but the other 4 head coaches in 2013, after the 2, I bet a lot of them would have crashed and burned. And I bet they would all say that. Like, yeah, I wasn't ready. No chance. I would have been overwhelmed. But when they got their chances in 2017 or 2019 or 2021 or whatever year they got them, right? LaFleur a little later, McDaniels a couple years ago, Kyle and Sean in 2017. Raheem Morris didn't get his till 2024. And they'd say, I'm much more equipped now of going through it all. You should want, it sucks at the time, but professional struggles, I would say, are what make you or give you the ability for future success. Professional success, I mean, it doesn't teach you that much. I'm not saying you can't learn from when you're being successful of what works and double down, like, obviously. But when things are not going well and there aren't really answers, you kind of got to look at yourself in the mirror and like, we got to figure this out. And then you look back a year later and like, God, I figured it out. That wasn't that hard. Or God, that last year, I really changed a lot. I can't do that anymore. I need to do more of this and less of that. So I hear what you're saying. And that picture is going to be, I would say, put up on television screens during football season, probably forever. I mean, in perpetuity till the day I die. I mean, that picture is never going away, even when those guys are retired. But I think it's easy to play that game, and I don't necessarily think it's fair.